We have a massive New York Jets trade update as a report has revealed the Jets' master plan as after signing Justin Fields to a 2-year contract, repairing him with Garrett Wilson, which was an elite duo back in college at Ohio State. The New York Jets are now linked to another great Ohio State wide receiver, and we're going to break all of this down, go over if this move makes sense for the Jets, and much more. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jets Digest. It's Chris and Matt here, and we're going to jump right into things as always. Guys, if you're enjoying the channel, make sure to subscribe to Jets Digest. If you're part of that 74% that's not subscribed, it really does help us out a ton. We're so close to 4,000 subscribers. We're very close. Make sure to jump on the train when you can. But let's jump into this video because we have a lot to discuss. Darren, Mougey and the New York Jets made some moves that first day of free agency, and the biggest one by a country mile was signing Justin Fields as the team's starting quarterback for at least the next season, but it was for a 2-year deal where Fields now gets a chance to prove that he is an NFL starter, with many people having differing opinions on this matter. And well, on top of that, one of the big things here is that it keeps Garrett Wilson happy, as Garrett Wilson now gets re-teamed up with Justin Fields, as we all know. And on top of all this, now the New York Jets being linked to another great Ohio State wide receiver, a teammate of theirs, as it was revealed by the Saints press on USA Today that Chris Olave has a big contract extension on the horizon and a serious injury history behind him with all the concussions. This may be something the Saints view as a chance to reboot their offense, get a good pick or two back, and give Kellen Moore the resources he needs to build his own offense. Meanwhile, the Saints are in that weird, not even weird, just that bad salary situation. And the Jet press talked about this, saying that one possible route would be to explore a trade for a wide receiver that their quarterback, Justin Fields, is very familiar with in Chris Olave. The Jets already have one of Fields' former Ohio State receivers under contract in Garrett Wilson. Why not go out and get another one? Rumors have been circulating in recent weeks that the Saints are potentially entertaining offers for standout wide receiver Chris Olave. And while no reputable report has confirmed that the Saints are actively shopping him or even fielding calls, the speculation isn't unfounded, and it's easy to connect the dots that the Saints, already in cap hell, might not want to pay Chris Olave when they could reset a rookie contract, as they would be able to get some serious value in exchange for trading Chris Olave. And it would not be surprising, looking at a team in the New York Jets who they have one wide receiver in Garrett Wilson, to pair up Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields with a guy they know well would make some sense, especially when trying to find some comfortability for Justin Fields as he hits his third team in 3 years. On top of that, the New York Jets could be able to build this young core and hope it works out. At the very least, you have two wide receivers who, if Olave stays healthy, you have an excellent 1-2 punch for the next 7-8 years to come between Wilson and Olave. It is a move that would excite Jets fans around the world. Obviously, at the same time, the Jets would move from being the New York Packers to the New York Buckeyes, but it's not taking older veterans now. Now it's taking younger guys who are, at least in the sense of Wilson and Olave, are about to hit their primes, Matt.
Yeah, this is a very exciting player. Justin Fields would have connections to both of these guys, so he's already has familiarity throwing to them, which is going to give him a higher chance of being successful with his 1-year tryout with the New York Jets. And I know Chris Olave only had 400 receiving yards this season, but if we look at where he's graded out on PFF, they grade out 98 wide receivers who got the most targets. So they're grading the guys who got the opportunities, and with comparing him to the other guys who got those opportunities, Chris Olave was graded as the 15th best wide receiver all around of those 98 wide receivers, with a receiving grade of an 83, which is very high for PFF standards, and graded 18th out of 98 wide receivers, even though his 43 targets ranked 97th out of those 98 wide receivers. So his targets 43 and his receiving yards at only 400 was both in the very bottom of those receivers who got that much action. So what we're seeing from Pro Football Focus here is the tape is really good on Olave, but the production is really bad. So we're trying to figure out why that could be happening. I think it's the Saints offense is a little bit dysfunctional. I know to start the season, before Chris Olave went out those concussions, the Saints were blowing the doors off teams. So it's a little bit strange why Chris Olave was not getting a whole lot of burn in that offense. But we saw later in the season when Olave wasn't getting the ball or when Derek Carr was throwing it to other people, we could see on the field that there were friction between those two players. So that could be one of the reasons contributing to the disparity behind the film, what we're seeing on film, and then the actual production out of Chris Olave. If you know what kind of prospect this guy was coming out of school, it's not surprising that the Saints would have to trade up to go get him in the first round of the draft because he was a really good prospect. Then he hit the league and before this season, his yards have been perfectly comparable to Garrett Wilson's yards. Also, he's been with bad quarterbacking play. Chris Olave is just like Garrett Wilson. He is 6 feet tall. He's he's not even that light. He's 187 pounds, so he's not even that light of a guy. A player who, like you said, Chris, when we only have Garrett Wilson on the roster, Chris Olave could be the perfect complement for Garrett Wilson because he's another wide receiver one. The problem would be we'd have to pay him a lot of money, but Justin Fields is not on that like Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type of big contract. So I do think while we have a quarterback who we're not paying as much, it's important for us to pay the guys around him to put our quarterback in the best situation to possibly be successful that he could possibly be. We just saw the Detroit Lions, where Tanner Engstrand and Aaron Glenn are from. They have multiple very, very high-level wide receivers. They had Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know wasn't drafted in the first round, but a very good wide receiver, definitely a first-round talent who should have went in the first round. But then they didn't stop there. They went out, drafted Quinnen Williams also in the first round to pair with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Aaron Glenn and Tanner Engstrand are going to want to bring in as much talent as possible. They're not going to look at bringing in Chris Olave. They're going to view bringing in another wide receiver one as a positive. They're not going to view it as putting too much assets into one position. And what's kind of funny about Quinnen Williams and Chris Olave is Quinnen Williams was selected with pick 12 in the 2022 NFL draft. Chris Olave taken with pick 11. But if you ask me, I think the Saints got off a lot better there. In my opinion, Chris Olave is a lot better than Quinnen Williams, and I would be stoked to have him on the New York Jets.
If the one Lions fan that we know personally is watching this, he's going to attack you in the comments. And
no, I've been telling him, Quinnen Williams is just fast. It's just fast.
True, you have said that before. But also, Waymo! On top of all that,
Waymo, more like Way, watch me throw this interception in the playoffs.
But speaking of the Lions and all that, if the Jets were to trade for Chris Olave, they obviously understand the contract extension is upcoming. Something interesting to think about as well, again, how this pertains to the Lions, is you still don't have a big receiver, and you don't want to spend a lot of money. It does make you wonder if then the Jets would just beeline it for Tim Patrick, because you then get a guy who does give you that big body wide receiver that you need, who probably wouldn't be the most expensive option out there, and where you would want Tim Patrick theoretically is like a wide receiver 3 role anyway. So I think it comes back to that would make some sense as well. And looking at that receiving room as those 3 guys as your top 3 wide receivers, if you're looking at, you got Justin Fields, and then in the backfield you got Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, then Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Tim Patrick, Malachi Corley, like tight ends to be named later. It's a good, with the exception of Patrick, it's an exciting young offense. You have 2 wide receivers who are great. You have 2 very exciting running backs who are young as well. Justin Fields is the real question mark there, and I don't know if you'd classify him as a question mark exactly. But it does give the Jets a young team and a young offense that does have some real potential if Justin Fields can get the passing game down better. And then you have a veteran Patrick. Yeah.
Well, so about Tim Patrick, let's see here. Sports Illustrated is predicting a 1-year, $5 million contract for him. Tim Patrick, he shouldn't be our wide receiver 3. I don't think he's good enough to do that still where he is at this stage in his career. Those 2 back-to-back season-ending injuries took a toll on his production, took a toll on his body and everything that he could do. So I do think Tim Patrick is going to be signed to the New York Jets, but I don't think he's someone who should factor into the scheme too much. I think he'd be more of a culture builder and a wide receiver depth, and he'd file in as a wide receiver 4. I think a more likely option would be the New York Jets selecting a bigger-bodied wide receiver in rounds 4 or 5 of the draft. They would take a wide receiver who isn't as good as a prospect. Obviously, that's why they're taking him that deep in the draft. But someone who is going to be the X wide receiver, line up on the line of scrimmage, and occupy that role for the team, but also Aaron Glenn has talked about how they scouted Jameson Williams to be a guy who could run clear out routes, which are routes really deep down the field to get rid of safeties so we can throw the ball under. So maybe they go out and invest in a really, really fast wide receiver to play that role and just sprint down the field, get the safeties out of the area of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. So that could be the answer at wide receiver. I'm a little bit confused why we haven't heard more buzz in free agency about wide receivers as it pertains to the New York Jets. It feels like they have a plan in place at wide receiver, whether it's drafting Tedero McMillan or whether it's a trade that we don't know about at this time, or maybe it could be this trade. I think the Saints would most likely not settle for a deal not including a first-round pick. If the Jets are very highly convinced that they're going to be a winning team this season, they could offer the 2026 first-round pick that we have. But if they get a trade down, they could always offer a 2025 first if we traded down before then. Obviously, we're not giving up the 7th overall pick for Chris Olave. But Chris Olave, he's not going to be – he can line up as an X wide receiver, but it's much more likely that the New York Jets are going to go out and acquire another wide receiver to play that position, because that's not the perfect role for Chris Olave. He's someone you want to move around all over the formation, just like Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I agree. I think it comes down to if the Jets were to trade down, and then you could move like the 18th pick for Olave and also have some draft capital added up. That would be super helpful for the team. So I would like to see that. I like the idea of Chris Olave. I think it's one of those things where also you could very much quickly fall in love with the idea of it and kind of forget about the fact that he's had 5 concussions already before he's had 1 contract extension. And not all of them have been in the NFL, but like he has had 5 concussions, and it is something to keep an eye on when it comes to just injuries in general. Matt's fact-checking me right now. I was just reading it.
I thought it was 4. I know he had one at Ohio State, but I thought it was 3 in the NFL.
What I read, I believe, I want to say it was on the Jet Press, was that there's 5 for his career. Or 5 for his just life, I guess.
Okay, well, all right, I'm seeing. Yeah, no, you're right. ESPN, Olave has now had 4 confirmed concussions in his NFL career.
Oh, yeah.
So 4 in the NFL, 1 in college. That's a lot. I'm still willing to take a risk on him.
No, so am I.
It's like Tua. Obviously, Tua should retire, but he's not going to retire. So
exactly.
if Chris Olave, if he's going to keep putting himself at risk, I'd like him to do it for the New York Jets instead of the Saints.
So would I. I think at the end of the day, it still makes sense for a team like the Jets. You get 2 young wide receivers, you have a great core behind you, and then you just have to figure out, is Justin Fields your option at quarterback, which you and I both believe he probably will not be. But guys, let us know what you think down below. Like this video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Have a great day, and go Jets. It didn't let me stop recording. It's all your fault, Matt.